For today's presentation, we're just going to go over some financial aid basics and to just kind of give you guys some tips and ideas of what to think about next as you all are beginning to begin your undergraduate here at the University of Florida. So today's agenda, we're going to go over just a quick review of financial aid basics. We're going to talk a little bit about the one.uf page and how to navigate that with your financial aid details. We're going to talk about how to receive financial aid, how to maintain your financial aid eligibility, and then we'll end it off and open it up for any questions that you all may have. So first, let's take a look at some financial aid overview. So as part of your process here, some of the things you've probably completed or should have completed and have already completed includes completing the financial aid application. So the FAFSA application, which is the free application for federal student aid. This is the application that most students would complete for need-based grants, need-based scholarships, student loans, or federal work study. If you're coming in for the summer semester, which I believe most of you are, hopefully you've already completed your 21-22 FAFSA application, and that's the application that begins for the summer semester. In addition to that, you would have also completed the 22-23 application, which begins in the fall semester. If you're coming in for the summer and would like to be considered for financial aid for the summer semester, there's still some time to complete your 21-22 FAFSA. The deadline for that is June 30th, so you want to complete that as soon as possible. And then, of course, if you want to be considered for aid for the fall and spring semester that's coming up, you still have some time to complete the 22-23 FAFSA. Some other financial aid applications that you probably already completed is the Florida Bright Future Scholarship application, which is called the Florida Financial Aid application. The deadline to complete that is August 31st. So if you still have some information that you need to submit or update, be sure to do that as soon as possible so that our office will be able to receive that information. You've already gone through the admissions application process, and congratulations, you've been accepted. You are now part of the Gator Nation. And now we're going to look at some next steps. So you've already been admitted. Hopefully you've already completed your financial aid applications. And if you've completed the FAFSA, you probably are also already received your financial aid package. So what we're going to talk about next is some tips and some next steps that you want to keep in mind before you begin classes for the summer semester and before you begin classes in the fall. So we all know that college costs money. So let's talk about some of the costs associated with college. With every institution, there are several different types of educational related expenses included in attending school, and that includes tuition and fees, books and supplies, transportation, personal items, clothing, housing, food, all of that builds up to your cost, some of your expenses for college. And we call all of that our cost of attendance. So every institution has what's called the cost of attendance, which includes all of these items. It's not just tuition. It's updated every single year, and it includes costs for both the fall and spring semester. Here at UF, we include the fall and spring averages for students, and it can vary for each student. So although we have a standard cost of attendance for most of our students, some of these costs can vary depending if you're an in-state student versus an out-of-state student, if you're a UF Online student versus a campus student, if you're planning to live with a parent versus living in a dorm or living off campus. So your cost of attendance can vary for each student, but we include a standard cost of attendance on our website to give you an idea of how much everything costs. So the cost of attendance include what we call direct costs and indirect costs. Direct costs are costs that the university will bill students. So this includes tuition and fees, when you register for courses. If you're purchasing books from the UF bookstore, if you're signed up for on-campus housing, or if you're signed up for a meal plan, those are expenses that the university is going to bill you. So those would be direct costs. Our cost of attendance also includes indirect costs. So things like technology, if you need to purchase a laptop or a computer, if you need clothes or personal expenses, if you purchase books from Amazon, or if you plan on living off campus and paying rent every month, those would be considered indirect costs because the university is not going to bill you for that. Those are things that you would just pay on your own. So those are the different components to the cost of attendance. More information on that, if you want to see a breakdown of the different types of costs, are included on our financial aid website as well. So we've talked about costs. Let's talk about how to pay for these costs or these expenses. So there are various different types of payment options. The first group of payment options we'll talk about are options that are managed by our university bursar's office. It includes some options that are using college savings plans, or if you're planning to pay out of pocket. So the first one, which is a pretty common one, is the Florida prepaid. Students who are coming with Florida prepaid, their prepaid plan are handled by our university bursar's office. It's pretty much an automatic process. There isn't anything that you have to submit to our office or to submit to the university bursar's office. The university bursar office will automatically pull in students based on their social security number. And if there's a prepaid plan associated with their information, they will automatically bill for the student's tuition to that Florida prepaid plan. So there isn't anything that you have to do. The only action that you would have to take is to opt out of Florida prepaid, only if you don't want your prepaid plan to be billed. So if for whatever reason, maybe you want to pay for your students' expenses for a semester, or maybe they're on a full scholarship and you want to save your prepaid plan for later, you'll want to opt out on the one.uf page so that the bursar office does not bill your prepaid plan. If you have some type of third-party sponsor, these could be private or public organizations. They can be a trust account or some type of foreign account that is going to be responsible for paying the student's tuition or some type of mandatory health insurance. Then there's documentation that will need to be submitted to our university bursar's office before the end of the first week of classes. So if that's something that's applicable to you, you just want to make sure documentation for that is sent to the bursar's office before the end of the first week of classes. And that can be sent either by mail to the university bursar's PO box, which is on here, or you can drop that off to Kreiser Hall and submit that to the university bursar's office that way. If you're wanting to pay out of pocket, there are a couple of out of pocket payment options. If you want to pay online, you can do that through the one.uf page. You can use an electronic check version, which is essentially using your bank account. If you have your account number information or a routing information, then you can pay using that method. And essentially that's free of charge. There's no service charge for that. So that's a service-free option if you want to pay online. If not, you can also use a debit card or a credit card if you don't have an electronic check option. That's not available to you. You can use a credit card or a debit card, but using a debit card or a credit card does charge a service fee. So be sure to keep that in mind. If you're not wanting to do an online payment, maybe you want to do a more in-person payment, keep in mind that the university bursar office does not accept cash. So the only way you can make a payment is either using a personal check, a cashier's check, or a money order. And you can either mail that to the university bursar office, or you can bring that in person to Kreiser Hall and drop it off in the 24-hour drop box. Just keep in mind, if you do want to use some type of check, make sure the student's information is on there, such as the UFID and the student's name, so that the bursar's office is able to apply that to the student's account. Another form of payment option is using financial aid. So financial aid can come in various different forms. You have grant options, which are need-based grants, institutional grants. There are scholarship options like Bright Futures or some type of private outside scholarships. There's student employment option, and then there's student loans option. So we'll go into these a little bit more detail. Some of these federal aid programs do require a FAFSA application on file. Some you would apply outside, especially for scholarships. Usually you would apply for that with the different various donors. Eligibility criteria can vary for each of these types of aid programs. And the amounts can vary each year depending on what the student is eligible for. So we'll take a look at some financial aid options that students most commonly come in with. So one of those is the Bright Futures Scholarship. A good majority of our students come in with Bright Futures, and we use two different levels. So students usually come in with either the academic scholars level, which covers 100% of the UF tuition rate. Here at UF, tuition is about $212 per credit hour. So if they're receiving the Bright Futures Academic Scholarship, the Bright Futures Academic will cover that $212.71 per credit hour that the student is enrolled in. The second tier is the Florida Medallion Scholarship. So with the Florida Medallion Scholarship, it covers 75% of tuition, and that's about $159.53 per credit hour that the student is enrolled in. With the Bright Futures Scholarship, students only need to submit Florida financial aid application just one time. So once they submit that and they're determined to be eligible, as long as they're meeting the renewal requirements, so meeting the GPA, passing all of their courses, they will automatically renew every single year. Students are required to be enrolled at least 6 credits, which is half time, and they can use their Bright Futures for fall, spring, and the summer semester, as long as they're enrolled at least half time. During their coursework, if for whatever reason a student needs to drop or withdraw from a course, they will be required to pay back Bright Futures for those dropped courses. Federal Work Study. So Federal Work Study is a need-based program. It does require a FAFSA application in order to be considered for it. And if a student demonstrates financial need as determined by the FAFSA, and they're enrolled at least half time, they may be eligible for federal work study. Students who are eligible for federal work study will have the work study award posted on their financial aid package. And essentially what that allows a student to do is to look for jobs on campus. There's a lot of student assistant jobs available on campus that are open to students, and they typically require students to have a federal work study award. So if you have that option, it's a great opportunity to look for jobs on campus. Students can look for jobs using the jobs.ufl.edu website, which is on the PowerPoint slide here. And then you just essentially go through the job search and hiring process. So you apply for a job, you submit your cover letter or your resume. You go through an interview process, and if you're hired, you can work up to 20 hours each week with your employer. And essentially you would earn a paycheck every 2 weeks. And that money goes directly to the student. It's not something that UF keeps. The student will just receive that in their direct deposit account, and they can use that for any educational related expense that they have. They can save it for future semester. It's really up to them. With federal work study, if a student has that option and if their schedule allows it, it's a great way to build a network and meet different faculties and staff on campus. And it's also a great way to earn some work experience, right? So coming into college, one of the main reasons is to get a job afterwards. And a lot of times jobs do require some type of work experience in addition to having a degree. So building that work experience now is a great way to set you up for success when you look for a job after you graduate. The next type of aid program are student loans. Student loans also require a FAFSA application on file. And it requires students to be enrolled in at least 6 credit hours to receive it. There are several different types of student loans. The first 2 types are subsidized and unsubsidized loan. And these are loans that the student can take out under their name. So the subsidized loan, this is the loan that is interest-free while the student is enrolled. So if they take out a subsidized loan, no interest will accrue on the loan until after the student graduates or until they completely withdraw from school. The unsubsidized loan does accrue interest while they're in school. So if they take out the loan, interest is going to be building while they're in school. With both of these loans, students are not required to make any payments on the loan until 6 months after they graduate or if they completely withdraw from school. So if they take out this loan, they're not required to make payment, but if you're taking an unsubsidized loan, just keep in mind that interest is accruing. If you want to make payments early, that is possible. So if you're able to do that, that'll be a good idea to kind of like reduce your loan debt in the future. But those are some things that you want to keep in mind. If a student is offered loans, they are going to show up on the one.uf page. And the student has the option to either decline it, so they're not required to accept it if they don't want it or if they don't need it. So if they don't want the loan, they can decline it, they can reduce it, or they can just accept the amount that has been given to them. And then they also want to make sure they complete the entrance counseling and the master promissory note on studentaid.gov. And this will allow us to disperse the funds. So it's not a really quick process with the loan. Students have to actively accept it. complete the entrance counseling and the master promissory note, and then we can disperse the loans. Now, because with student loans, students can only take up a certain amount each year. Sometimes it's not enough to cover all of their expenses. So parents have the option to apply for a Parent Plus loan as well. And the Parent Plus loan can be awarded a specific amount or up to the student's cost of attendance so that they can have money to pay for any other expenses. So with the Parent Plus loan, again, it does require a FAFSA application on file, but this is something that the parent would take out under the parent's name. So a parent would complete a supplemental application on studentaid.gov. It is based on credit history. So if a parent is approved, then we can award the Parent Plus loan. Now, if a parent is denied a Parent Plus loan, there is an option for the student to receive additional unsubsidized loan. It's not going to be up to the cost of attendance. It's going to be a limited amount, but they can take that out under the student's name. But that's only if a parent is denied a Parent Plus loan. So either way, if you're looking for additional loan options, if you need additional loan options, a Parent Plus loan, whether you get approved or denied, can allow students additional option for additional aid. The next type of aid program are scholarships. So these are more so talking about outside scholarships. So aside from what you may receive through FAFSA or through Bright Futures or any type of aid that UF awards, sometimes students may ask, how can I apply for additional scholarships? So there are various different ways you can apply for additional scholarships. Students can look at their specific organizations and specific organizations within their community, in their hometown. So if there's clubs or organizations in your hometown, those are great options to look at or to look for to see if they have any scholarships available to you. Parents, if you have an employer that offers scholarship, that's a great way for students to apply for scholarships. And then even within UF, there may be various different departments that offer scholarships to students too. So up here, we have a screenshot of our scholarship search engine. And this is a way for students to look for scholarships within different UF departments. So depending on their major, depending on their class standing, whether they're a freshman or a junior, GPA, there's a lot of different criteria that students can use to filter through and look for scholarships that way. So that will be another great resource for students to use. Keep in mind that looking for outside scholarships, it's not an easy thing. We always encourage students to research often and apply for as many scholarships that you can. Be sure that you are careful about any scams. If they ask for credit card information or really personal banking information, it might not be a real scholarship. It could be a scam, so just be careful about that. But this is a great resource to use to look for scholarships within the UF, various UF departments. And then we also include in the scholarship search engine some third-party options too, so that can open up some scholarships options that way. If you do receive any type of outside scholarships through a private organization, be sure to report that on your one.uf page. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but just make sure you report that so our office is aware of it. And if you have any outside scholarship checks that was mailed to you or will be coming to our office, just be sure that they mail that to our disbursements office, and the address is posted on the PowerPoint slide. And the address is also posted on our financial aid website as well. If you prefer, you can also bring scholarship checks in person to Chrysler Hall. You can drop it off in the 24-hour drop box, and we'll add it to the student's award package. All right, so let's talk about the one.uf page. The one.uf page is the page that students will definitely want to get familiar with. It's going to include information about, the courses that they're registered for. This is where they can view their class schedule, view their grades, check for charges, view their financial aid information, authorization, information release, all of that great stuff. It does require their GatorLink username and password to log in, and it's operable on their laptop or on their smartphone or tablet. So we're going to kind of look through the different pages on the one.uf page. When you first log in, you're going to see your home page, and it's going to include things like the action item summary. This is really important to check often, because if a student has any holds or any to-dos on their one.uf page. It's going to be really important to get those done as soon as possible to prevent a delay in being able to disperse their financial aid or even being able to register for courses. On this page, you'll also be able to see your campus finance page. And this is where students can see all of the charges that have been posted on their accounts. So tuition charges, health insurance charge, if they signed up for a meal plan, those are going to show up on that campus finance page. For financial aid, there's a section where they'll be able to click on their financial aid and click on the year that they are attending. So if it's the 21-22 or the 22-23, the financial aid package will be posted on those respective years, and you'll be able to see a breakdown of what you're receiving. So let's take a look at the financial aid summary page. So when you click on the financial aid section page, this is what you're going to see. At the top is going to show what's called the satisfactory academic progress. If you're receiving any type of federal aid, such as Pell Grant, student loans, federal work study, we do require students, or at least the federal government does require students to maintain satisfactory academic progress. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation, but essentially there's a certain GPA that students have to meet. They have to make sure that they're passing their courses and completing their degree within a certain amount of credits. So as long as you're maintaining that, you'll be able to continue to maintain your federal aid options. Under the satisfactory academic progress section, you're going to see the summary of your estimated cost of attendance. So we talked about earlier about that breakdown of cost of attendance. Here you'll be able to see your specific cost of attendance for each semester. So here for the 21-22, this student has the fall, spring, and summer estimates. Just keep in mind that when it comes to the cost of attendance, these are averages. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to actually accumulate the amounts that we've posted. This is more so that you can have an idea and to be able to budget your finances a little bit better. But here we do provide that for each student so that you'll be able to see what your specific cost of attendance would look like. Under that summary, you're going to see your actual aid package, and this will include any grants or scholarship that you receive. That's going to show up on the gift aid section. If you've been awarded federal work study, that's going to show under there as well. And then if you have any student loans that have been offered to you, that would show under the federal work study. And you'll see something that says take action, where you'll be able to either accept the loan, reduce the loan, or decline the loan. And then again, if you're interested in taking out a PLUS loan, you would do that through the studentaid.gov website. And then finally, at the bottom of the financial aid summary, you're going to see what's called the additional aid. So this is for anyone who is receiving any outside scholarships, any private scholarships. This is how you can report this to our office so that we are aware that you're receiving it. You'll just click on the Add Additional Aid button, list the name of the scholarship that you're receiving, how much you're receiving, and then once that scholarship check comes in, we will post it to your financial aid award package. So we talked about cost, we talked about the different financial aid programs or different payment options to pay for those costs. We looked through the one.uf page so that you can have an idea of how to navigate some of that information. So now let's talk about how to receive your financial aid. Once you've been admitted to the University of Florida, or a couple of weeks afterwards, if you've completed your FAFSA application, if you've completed your requirements for Bright Futures, or if there are any other scholarships that UF is awarding you, you would have received your financial aid package. And you can view that on that one.uf page. And it lists out your cost of attendance and any type of financial aid that you're receiving. For summer aid offers, those are posted late spring. For incoming students, that would have been posted already for you if you've already completed your FAFSA application. For upcoming years or subsequent aid years, so for next year and the following years to come, your financial aid package for the following year would usually post in the early summer semester or the late spring semester. And that information would be available on your one.uf page. You would also receive an email about that as well. You want to make sure that once you receive your aid package, or once you're familiar with what type of aid programs you're receiving, understand the different eligibility requirements for that. So financial aid that is federal aid, such as need-based grants, may have different eligibility criteria versus your outside scholarship or even Bright Futures. So you want to make sure that you're familiar with the different eligibility requirements needed in order to renew your financial aid. Some financial aid programs are not automatically renewable every year. So you want to also be aware of that so that you know how to supplement your finances or how to supplement that additional aid for following years. And then financial aid is subject to change depending on your enrollment status, depending on your residency, if you were switching majors or any other different types of eligibility changes. Those can affect your financial aid eligibility for subsequent years. So when it comes to actually receiving your financial aid, the process for that is that at the beginning of every semester, whether it's the fall, spring, or summer semester, students have what's called the drop add period. And during the drop add period, students are finalizing their schedule, they're adding or dropping courses, and then they're essentially finalizing their schedule. After that drop add period, we are able to determine how many credit hours students are actually enrolled in, and then we begin the disbursement process. So what our office does, we take the student's financial aid, so any scholarships, any grants, any student loans that have been accepted, we use those funds and apply it to any charges that have been billed to the student. So on their one.uf page, they're able to see under campus finances any charges that have been billed to them. So like tuition, housing, meal plans. We use that financial aid to pay for those charges first. If the student has more charges than they do financial aid, they're going to be left with the balance. And it's going to be up to the student or parent to go back and pay for whatever's left over, pretty much paying for whatever financial aid doesn't cover. So you want to make sure that you keep an eye on your one.uf page to make sure that you're not that you're able to pay off any debt that's still owed to the university. If the student has more financial aid than they do charges, the student is going to be left with a refund. So any extra money left over after all of the charges have been paid off will go to the student as a refund. And we give the student the money through their direct deposit account. So on that one.uf page, students can set up their direct deposit account using a checking account that's under the student's name. They'll essentially list their account number information and routing number, and any extra money will just go into that bank account. UF does not hold any extra financial aid money, any refunds for the student for later semesters. We can't do that. We give that money back to the student, and they can use that for any other expenses such as books, supplies. If they're living off campus, they can use that to pay rent. It's really up to them how they use those funds. Something that the student also wants to consider is completing the student permissions. And the student permission gives us permission to use their financial aid to pay for those expenses that I talked about. So tuition, housing, Gator dining, books that have been posted on the account, students can complete the permissions on their one.uf. And what we'll do is that we'll use that financial aid to pay for all of the expenses first before giving the student any refund. If they don't complete the student permissions, what will happen is that we take the financial aid. It only gets applied towards tuition, but if they have any housing charges or Gator dining charges or bookstore charges, we're not going to pay that. What will happen is that the refund will just go to the student, and it'll be up to them to go back to their account to pay off whatever's left over. So to make the process a little bit easier, it'll be more beneficial to just give the student permission, and then we can take care of those charges for you. And then any refund that you receive, the student will know, okay, this is your money to keep to use for anything else. Keep in mind that any financial aid refund you receive is meant to be used for educational expenses. So coming into college, this is going to be the time where you're going to have to start learning how to manage and budget your funds. So if you're living off campus, or if you have other supplies or personal expenses that you need, or if you know you need to save your money for future semesters, make sure you're budgeting and managing your funds in a way so that you won't have to worry about paying for food or paying for rent or anything that you know that you'll need. So again, these are the different types of educational expenses, such as books, supplies, technology, if you need a laptop or a cell phone, transportation, such as gas, and then some personal expenses or like supplies or clothing or things like that. So just making sure that you are budgeting your funds. You can always reference that cost of attendance sheet that I mentioned earlier. It's on our financial aid website. So if you want to look at that and kind of use that as a starting point for a budget for each semester, that's a great tool to do that so that you know how to manage your fund for each semester. Some budgeting tips to keep in mind. You want to make sure that you're tracking your funds. So things that you're spending money on, make sure you track them so that you know what you're spending your money on. So if you're spending a lot of money on food or takeout, or if you're spending a lot of money on clothing or things that are not educational related, you might want to rethink your budget and how you spend your money. You want to try to make sure your funds last for each semester. So we disperse aid at the beginning of each semester. You pretty much get any excess. So if you're receiving any excess financial aid, any refund, you get that at the beginning of the semester. So we don't disperse it monthly. We don't disperse it in installments. You get that lump sum in the beginning of the semester, and then you use that money to cover your expenses for each semester. So that's something else to keep in mind. Prioritizing your spending, putting money aside for savings. It's okay to do that so that if there's any emergencies that come up, you can have funds for that. And then setting financial goals. So if you want to take a study abroad trip next semester or in future years, you can start saving up for that as well. Our financial aid website has a lot of different types of financial literacy videos and resources. So that'll be a great tool to use to be able to get some tips and ideas of how to manage your finances. Our last topic is maintaining eligibility. You heard me mention earlier in the presentation about satisfactory academic progress. So if you're receiving any type of federal financial aid, and this includes Pell Grant, institutional need-based grants, student loans, or federal work study, you are required to maintain satisfactory academic progress. Meeting satisfactory academic progress means that you are maintaining a 2.0 GPA, you are at a 75% completion rate of all attempted coursework, and you're completing your degree within 160 credit hours. We do evaluate students at the end of each academic year. So if a student is not meeting any of the requirements, their federal aid eligibility will be terminated. And if it's terminated, students will receive an email notifications and their SAP status will be updated on their one.uf page. Now, if there are any extenuating circumstances as to why a student was not able to meet any of the requirements, they will have the option to petition, and those petitions are available on our website. Other things to make sure that you're meeting eligibility or maintaining eligibility is completing any requirements, any to-dos on your one.uf page. So if you are submitting a FAFSA application, there are some times where students are selected for verification. And verification is essentially a federal process where we review your FAFSA application to make sure that the information submitted is accurate. So if you were selected for verification, that'll also show up on your one.uf page under your to-do list. Our verification process is done through a third party called ProEd Verify. So any documentation needed would be submitted through them. Once that process is completed and you are clear to go, our office will receive that notification and then we can continue on with your financial aid. Any loan requirements that you have, you do have to accept them. So if you want loans, you do have to accept them, complete the entrance counseling and complete the master promissory note. Again, those would show up on your to-do list as well. So if you want to make sure that you have a smooth process, you want to make sure you complete that as soon as possible. And then lastly, for federal aid, again, with the FAFSA application, because most federal aid programs do require a FAFSA application, the FAFSA application is not automatically renewed. You do have to complete an application every single year to be considered for federal financial aid. So if you want to receive or be considered for aid, just make sure you complete your FAFSA application each year. It opens up on October 1st every single year. So on October 1st, the FAFSA application for the next academic year, which is the 23-24 school year, that'll open up on October 1st, and you just want to make sure you submit that as soon as possible.